What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In today's video we're going to build a simple QR code handler in Python with a graphical user interface, meaning that we're going to build a tool that allows us to generate QR codes and also to read or scan QR codes to get the content of the QR code in Python with a GUI. So let us get right into it.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
Alright, so for this tutorial today, we're going to use the Qt framework to build the graphical user interface, which means that we're going to use the PyQt5 library in order to interact with the Qt network. Now, if you've never worked with Qt or PyQt5, you can either follow along with this tutorial and learn on the fly, or you can watch my video on PyQt5. I have a beginner's tutorial showing you how to build simple and professional graphical user interfaces using PyQt5, so you might want to watch that. Or as I said, you can just follow along and learn on the fly. I will explain some basic stuff here and there, but the focus is going to be on the implementation. So for the graphical user interface in and of itself, we're going to use a drag and drop GUI builder application called Qt Designer. So you can just go online and download the Qt Designer, which is going to allow you to build the graphical user interface using drag and drop. So you can see here, I have the Qt Designer installed already, and I can click here on main window, create, and now I have this window and I can just drag and drop stuff from the left sidebar. So this is what we're going to use. Also, we're going to open up the command line and say pip install pyqt5 so that we have the library that we're going to need in today's video later on in the Python code. The idea is that we're going to build the graphical user interface here. We're going to save it as a UI file, and then we're going to load that UI file into Python and add some functionality to it, to the graphical user interface. And the idea for our UI is going to be quite simple. We're going to have a simple text edit on the right, like this. We're going to have two buttons below it, one showing to the left, one showing to the right. And then we're going to have an image on the left being the QR code image. And we're going to have the two buttons with the functionality to take the content of the image, to scan the QR code, and to turn it into content, to turn it into text in the text edit. And the other button is going to do the opposite. It's going to take the content of the text edit and turn it into a QR code. And then we're also going to add a menu up here, which is going to allow us to load and save the images that we produce. Or we're going to load the images to scan, or we're going to save the images that we generated. So that is that. We're going to take this text edit now. We're going to right click on the window and we're going to say layout horizontally here. So we're going to use a horizontal layout. Now we only have the text edit, which is why it fills up everything. But we're going to add now to the left of the text edit also a simple label. The label is what we're going to use for the image. So we're going to delete the text. It doesn't need any text. And we're going to set a minimum size. Now let's go with something like 300 times 300. And maybe let's shrink the window a little bit and let's maybe do something like this here. And now we're going to add two buttons to the actual text edit. Now, actually, I want to change something here. I want to actually delete this again. So maybe I can delete everything here. Can I remove this as well? No, actually, I didn't want to remove the status bar. I wanted to remove this one here. I'm not sure if it works, but let's do what I wanted to do. I want to have a vertical layout inside of the horizontal layout. So what I want to do is I want to have a horizontal layout. On the left side, I want to have the label. And on the right side, I want to have a vertical layout with the text edit and with two buttons. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the vertical layout here. And I'm gonna, it actually does it automatically. We have now the horizontal layout. Inside of it, we have the vertical layout. And now I'm going to add the text edit into the vertical layout, which worked. Then I'm gonna add the buttons, the push buttons into the vertical layout here. And now, last but not least, we're going to add the label into the horizontal layout. So we're going to take the label here, and I'm not sure if I can just drag it in here. It should have worked. There you go. I'm going to delete the text again, and I'm going to say the width is going to be 300 and the height is going to be 300, the minimum size. So this actually looks fine. So this button will have 3 arrows to the left. This one will have 3 to the right. And the functionality is quite obvious. We have an image here. Later on, we're going to say load the image. So we're going to have here a file. We're going to have a load. We're going to have a save, and we're going to have a quit without a plus. And load means we take a file from the system, we load it here, we load the image, then I click this button, turns it into the content, or I can just write some content, click here, it will produce a QR code. I will click on File, Save, and it's going to save that into a file. And I think that's it for the graphical user interface. So I'm going to just save this now. I'm going to call this QR code GUI. And I'm going to go to the directory that I'm working in, which is in my case this one here. I'm going to save it here as a UI file. And then I can go into PyCharm and work with this graphical user interface. So I'm going to go here. You can see I have this QR code UI. And I also have a sample image. You can scan it if you want to. This is a QR code that I generated before, not with the script, but with an online tool. So we're going to see that it is going to be able to read that later on. So what we want to do now is we want to import a couple of libraries. And first of all, we also want to install an additional library called QR code. So we want to say pip install QR code, and we also want to install OpenCV -Python. So we want to install CV2, which is a library that we're going to use for the actual scanning. The QR code library is going to be used for the generation. So we're going to say also here pip install OpenCV-Python. And once we have that, we can go on with the imports. We're going to say from pyqt5.qt widgets. We're going to import everything, which is, again, not the best practice way to do it. You should not use wildcard imports. But for the sake of this tutorial, for simplicity, so that I don't have to constantly say pyqt5 qt widgets dot something, I'm gonna just say import everything, and then from pyqt5 import UIC and qt GUI, and then we're going to also import, maybe we should do that above, we should also import CV2 and QR code. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to define our simple GUI class. I'm going to say my GUI is the class, and I'm going to say it is going to extend from QMain window, which is something that we imported from here using the wildcard import. And we're going to say now the constructor is going to do the following. We're going to say, first of all, super my GUI self dot underscore init or underscore underscore init underscore underscore, calling the constructor of the parent class, and then UIC load UI, and we're going to pass now the QR code GUI.UI, and we're going to say self.show. I think this should already give us the result that we want, and then we're going to have a bunch of methods in here, but we're going to add them as we go on. What we're going to do now is we're going to say def main. We're going to say app equals Q application with empty arguments. We're going to say my GUI is going to be called, and we're going to say app.exec underscore, and we're going to say now down here if underscore underscore name equals main, like this, then call the main function. And now I can run this, and it produced some problems. Let me just see if I forgot something. Did I forget something important? Yes, I didn't pass the self keyword when loading the UI, but this was not the problem. Let me check again. So we have my GUI QMain window calling my GUI self that UIC load UI. What did I forget here? Maybe I have to actually say this is window being equal to my GUI. Okay, I actually thought that this is not important because we're not using that variable, as you can see, but you have to store it into a variable as it seems. And here you can see the UI of our program. Now I'm gonna make this not resizable. I want to have it in a fixed size. You could of course also make this responsive and all that, but I'm gonna choose a fixed size here. And you can see that we have all the elements, and now we only need to add the functionality. So what we're going to do first is we're going to say in the constructor that we're going to always have a file that is active. We're going to have the current file that we're working with. By default, it's going to be an empty string. So we're going to say current file by default is going to be an empty string. Later on, we're going to set the file that we load or save to that file. And we're going to add functionality to the individual elements. So we can actually use the self keyword to refer to the individual UI elements. So if I click, for example, on this load thing here, you can see that I have an object name action load, and I have an object name action save, and I have here an object name push button or push button underscore 2 or text edit, or label. So we can access these keywords inside of Python since we loaded the UI file. And I can now go ahead and say action load, and I can connect it now to a function. So I can say .triggered .connect, and I can connect it to self.load image. And of course, this self.load image, I have to first create it here, self.load image, taking the self keyword. We're gonna say pass for now. Then we're gonna say self action safe .triggered connect is gonna be bound to or connected to safe image with the self keyword. It's gonna also be a pass for now. And then we want to implement the functionality of our buttons. We want to say self.pushButton. In this case, we say clicked, not triggered. Clicked connect, not save image. The function is going to be actually the first one. Which one was the first one? The first one was for parsing, for taking the content and creating the image. So for generating the code. Generate code is going to be the function here, and then we're going to say self push button 2. By the way, this is still running here. Let's detach here quickly. Push button 2, clicked, connect, and we say self.read code is going to be the function of the second button. And of course, we need to implement those. So we need to say def self dot, or actually def generate code self, and then pass, and then we can copy this. Come on. We can copy this and change the name to read code. So those are the functions, and basically all of the logic will be inside of those. Let's start with the simple functions that have nothing to do with the QR code. Let's just load and save files. So what we're going to do is we're going to say here that we want to have a simple file dialog. We're going to say options equals file dialog, or actually q file dialog dot options. And then we're going to say that the file name that we want to load and a return value that we're not interested in is going to be q file dialog get open file name. So opening up a dialog and getting the file name as a result. We're going to pass self, we're going to pass open file here as a title, we're going to pass an empty string, and we're going to pass what files we accept. And for the sake of simplicity for this video, we're just going to accept all files. So we're going to say all files and then parentheses, and inside of it a star, inside of those a star. Then we're going to say also the options are going to be equal to options. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, if we have a file name, if we actually chose a file, because if we just close it, it's going to be an empty string. If the file name is not equal to an empty string, what we're going to do is we're going to say self.currentFile will be updated to be that file name that we chose. And we're going to generate a pixmap based off it or from it. We're going to say qtgui.qpixmap self.currentFile. And then we're going to say pixmap equals pixmap, and we're going to scale it down to 300 times 300 or up, depending on the file, so that it fits our label size. And we're going to say then that the self.label that we have, we're going to set the scale contents. So set scaled contents will be true. And we're going to say self.label.set pixmap will be the pixmap that we just generated. So this already, if I'm not mistaken, should produce the results that we want. So if I run this now and I load an image, this one here, it is loaded into our program. And I think it's still resizable. So either we're going to change that in the code, or maybe we're going to do that in Qt Designer. So let's click on the main window. What was the option actually? It was something like set resizable or something. Do we have the option here? Set resizable, geometry, size policy. Okay, we're going to take care of that in the end, but for now we're just gonna work with that. The next thing we want to do is we want to do the opposite. Once we have an image in our program, we want to be able to save it. And even though we don't have the image yet, we're basically just going to do it the other way around. So we're going to just save whatever we have loaded. We're going to get the pix map, or actually let's do it the other way around, just so we have a nice workflow. We're going to do this in the end. We're going to first talk about generating and reading the code, and then we're going to save it, because right now we don't have anything to save. So let's keep that until the end, and let's do the generation and the reading first. Let's actually start with the reading, because we already loaded a file. The next step is to read a file, or to read the QR code, to read the content of the QR code. Then it would be to generate the QR code, and then in the end we're going to save the result. So let's go on with the reading. And for this we're going to say image equals the file that we just loaded. Remember, we still have the file that is loaded and displayed now. We still have the file name saved in self.current file. So we can go ahead now and say image equals cv2, which is OpenCV, imread self.current file. This loads the file, this loads the image into OpenCV, into a variable here. And now we're going to say the detector is going to be equal to cv2 QR code detector, part of the OpenCV library. And then we're going to say the data, the boundary box, I think, and then the straight QR code is going to be equal to detector.detect and decode image. And actually, I think we could leave those as unnamed parameters, because we're not using them. We are only interested in the data, and the data is going to be put as a content of self.textEdit. We're going to say set text is going to be data. So this already should work. We're going to load the image. We're going to say click, and there you go. You can see neural9.com. This is the URL of my website, is part of that QR code. That's the content of that QR code. So loading and reading the QR code already works. The next step is to now generate a QR code based on the content that we have in the text edit. So the other way around, essentially. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to use the QR code library. We're going to say QR equals QR code.QR code. The version is going to be equal to 1. The error correction is going to be QR code.constants.error correct L. The box size is going to be equal to 20. And the border is going to be 2. That is the object we have now. And now we're going to add to that QR code data. So this is the empty QR code object. We're now going to add data to it by saying qr.addData, and we're going to get the content of the text edit by saying self-textEdit.toPlainText. Come on, there you go. And then we're going to make this QR code by saying make fit equals true. And finally, we're going to say image is equal to QR make image. And we're going to say the fill underscore color is going to be black. And the back color is going to be white. So that's basically how we design our QR code. We could also use different numbers. It doesn't have to be black and white. It can also be white and black, red and blue, blue and green, whatever. But the standard is black and white here. And we're going to say now image save. We're going to save this into the current qr.png. So just a file to store our image. And we're going to say now the pixmap is going to be equal to qtgui.qpixmap based on current qr.png. Pixmap is going to be equal to qpixmap. Sorry, not qpixmap. Pixmap itself scaled to 300 and 300 again. Then the self label will have a pixmap of pixmap. And we're going to say again, what was the command? Set scaled contents. I think we only have to set this once, but I'm not sure. So I'm just going to do it twice here. But I think it would be enough to set that in the constructor, or maybe even the Qt designer. So that's that, which we should already be able to do that. Let me just remove this extra line here. So now I should be able to just type something and say, boom, we have a file here. And if I load something now, if I load this one here, and I click this button, we have again neural9.com. If I type something else, we load a different QR code. And if I add a lot of text, we should actually be able to see quite a complicated QR code. There you go. So this actually works. And last but not least, we're going to take care of the save image method, which is going to take the QPix map of the label and save it into a file of our choice, which means that we have to once again use a file dialog. So we're going to start again by saying options equals qFileDialog.options. We're going to say file name, and the value that we're not interested in are going to be equal to qFileDialog.getSaveFileName. And here we have self save file as a title, an empty string. And we're going to say now that we only accept PNG. So we're going to say PNG and then in parentheses, every name.png. This is how we define that. And then we're going to say options is going to be equal to options. And we're going to then say if a file name was provided, if file name is not equal to an empty string, what we're going to do is we're going to say the image is going to be the pixmap of self label. So self.label.pixmap. I think this is a function, a method. And then we're going to say image.save file name. And we want to use the PNG file type here. So that should work. The function should be connected already. The method should be connected already. So let's start this and let's see if we can go through the full process. So let's load a file, this sample file here. Actually, I didn't want to do that. Let's parse it. You can see it's the Neural 9 URL. Now let's do something else. Hello world, subscribe to Neural 9. Turn it into a QR code. There you go. And now we can save this into neural.png, and we have the file here, as you can see. So I can now close this again, I can run this again, and I can now say load neural.png, and there you go, we have the content. So maybe one last thing that we can do is we can add the quit functionality. So we can say self dot not push button, it was actually up here, self.action quit dot triggered, connect this to self dot quit program, and we're gonna say basically down here def quit program, and I think we should just go with exit 0. I'm not sure, maybe we should go with sys exit. I think it's a bit more powerful. So import sys, and then we can go down here and say sys exit 0. I think that should be enough to terminate the application. There you go, it works. So now we can use the functionality. There you go. We can say lorem ipsum whatever. Paste this a couple of times. Generate a crazy QR code. Actually, how far can we take this? Can I generate a crazy QR code? Okay, now it crashes. I think there's a limit to it, but I think this is fine. So we can now save it into huge.png. We can load, I'm saving it now again. We can load the other crazy one, which is a cure. Oh, actually, no, we didn't save the one, right? No, okay. So let's load the neural again. There you go. Let's load the other one again. Okay, this doesn't work for some reason, but I think this one works. Okay, for some, I think this one is too huge for OpenCV to parse, or maybe the resolution is not good enough, but the ordinary parsing works. So this is probably a problem with the OpenCV library. We should have a better resolution, or maybe not as huge QR codes. And now we can just go and say quit. This is how you build a simple QR code generator and reader with a graphical user interface in Python. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.